Now, Russia's President Medvedev has banned Muammar Gaddafi and his family from entering Russia. Britain's Foreign Secretary William Hague has said if Gaddafi stayed in power, it would be a nightmare. This as opposition fighters say they've retaliated against Gaddafi's attempts to put down the rebellion against him in the eastern part of the country. Rebel fighters are reportedly retaking control of the oil town of Brega. Tony Birtley has the latest on the fighting.
It doesn't look much like a line of defence, but here in the town of Ashdabia is where Libya's opposition fighters hope to stop the march of Gaddafi's forces. There is confidence, but also fear.
I expect he will kill a lot of people today, and he will kill a lot of people, and I am very afraid about Ashdabia now because he's keeping coming here, and we are coming back. We don't have heavy weapons.
Those heavy weapons have pounded the anti-government positions in the last few days, forcing fighters to retreat. There are still pockets of resistance within this zone, but the majority of rebels have been pushed back. Government forces have been using bombardments from the air and artillery and mortars from the ground. The rebels have mainly heavy machine guns mounted on the back of pickup trucks and little experience. Ashdabia is the last main town before the rebels' main stronghold of Benghazi. And the cost of this rebellion can be counted in the number of dead and injured. In the city's main hospital, the wounded are being brought in every day.
The first hit was about 10 meters away from me, and then the second hit came. And the next thing I knew, I woke up in the hospital. Thank God for everything in any case. Victory, victory, victory.
The number of bodies in the morgue perhaps suggests another story, and the Libyan regime, learning the technique of talking to international media, vows to regain control of the whole territory. There is concern on the streets of Benghazi, but no panic. There is talk of spies and infiltrators, of pro-Gaddafi sleeper cells waiting to be activated. Eastern Libya is awash with rumours and uncertainty. What happens here really depends on what happens in the battle zones less than 400 kilometres away. Despite the setbacks, the mood of the opposition, in public at least, remains one of confidence. It could be the rebellion is heading for the long haul. It may be that it's entering a critical phase, but it's difficult to see whether Libya's popular uprising is going to succeed at this moment or whether it's doomed to failure.
Well, let's go back to Tony, who's in Benghazi, the main rebel stronghold in the east of the country. Tony, what are members of the National Council and the rebel fighters there saying about the ongoing fight?
Well, they say it's going quite well. The head of the military arm is saying that the rebel fighters have taken back the old town of Brega. We're not sure if this is the entire town, that's just the main checkpoint outside of the town, because what happens is the rebel forces have been tending to congregate at the entrances to towns and fortifying them, but we don't know exactly the details. But they said they have pushed forward, they have taken prisoners from Gaddafi's forces, they say they're mercenaries, and they have killed a number of his men. I mean, as I've said before, it's very difficult to get a completely accurate idea, but it seems to be that the fighting is carrying on. We're also getting reports that the fight is coming closer to Benghazi because there have been aerial bombardments, according to journalists and wire services down in the area, in Ashdabia, which is basically 150 kilometres from Benghazi. That could be part of a softening up, or it could be a part of a strategy to stop the rearming of the rebels further down, further west. So I don't know. It's very hard to get a clear picture, but the fighting is becoming more intensive.
And that's the problem, isn't it? As Gaddafi's forces move closer towards Benghazi, there must be a feeling where you are of, the international community had better hurry up and do something, or this could be over.
Well, yes, there is a certain amount of anxiety, I have to say, from people you speak to, and some people are, they are seeing doom, to be honest. They're thinking, well, Gaddafi will win, he'll come here, he'll take over everything else, and there'll be terrible retribution. So they do want the international community to do something. The no-fly zone, I think, at the moment, when you look at it, the Air Force is not really doing that much damage. The damage is coming from the ground with the artillery and the mortar barrages, and Gaddafi's highly trained men. They may be mercenaries, but they may be his, specialised brigades. So it's very difficult. At the moment, an air exclusion zone would actually stop the final chapter, if you like. That would be the helicopter gunships and the final assault before somewhere like Benghazi falls. But I'm not sure that is possible at the moment, unlike February the 17th, when it all began, people are now much better armed. They're much better equipped to resist in the streets. And anyone coming into Benghazi, for example, would lose a lot of men in street fighting. So there are lots of possible scenarios here. Not clear exactly which way it will go.
OK, Tony, thanks for that. Tony Bertley in Benghazi there. Let's go to Tariq Youssef, who is Dean of the Dubai School of Government, joins me in the studio now. Is there a fear that the international community, which is slowly feeling its way towards imposing a no-fly zone and getting consensus on what action it takes in Libya, may act too late?
Precisely. It could become a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. Gaddafi might prevail. Too much bloodshed. Cities would fall one after the other. So the international community needs to be concerned about its delayed response, its inaction, quite frankly, on both the political front and on the no-fly zone.
Well, why dragging their heels? Because they've got consensus from the Arab states, which is one of the conditions they wanted to see before they went any further.
Exactly. They have one of the conditions, but I think what's been unambiguously missing in the last week has been a strong sense of what the U.S. wants to do. American leadership is going to matter a hell of a lot, partly because it's going to be American naval and warplanes that will impose a no-fly zone and will enforce it. It will be also a lot of American personnel that will be in the line of fire, possibly. American leadership has been invisible. There's a lot of muddling through within the U.S. government at the moment, mixed messages. They've agreed on the goal that Gaddafi needs to step down, but it seems to me they need to sort through a lot of concerns they have about Libya. Not necessarily about Gaddafi, but about the future of Libya post-Gaddafi. Until that happens, the international process is going to be a drawn-out one, and I'm afraid it will come at great cost to civilian lives, not just in Benghazi. I think we have to keep our minds on the cities further to the west, in the Western Mountains region, that have been essentially under a blockade. No food supplies, little medical equipment coming in, and little media coverage. And all the informal reports we're receiving from there suggest that it's only a matter of days or weeks before, in fact, a humanitarian crisis affecting primarily Libyans would be one that we will be hearing about.
And one interesting line coming out of Libya is that apparently Libyan armed forces are going to extend an amnesty to soldiers who've defected if they give up their weapons. That's apparently coming from Libyan state television. Does that mean that the number of defections is a lot greater than we thought? It's a real concern to Gaddafi?
Very much so, especially at the high level. We saw a couple of major defections in the last 72 hours. The more defections that take place, the more even lower-ranking officers will arrive at the conclusion that perhaps the defectors have realized that the regime is about to fall, that the end game is near, and more of these defections will take place. We've seen defections especially when soldiers have been asked to bomb civilian urban centers. That suggests that there are limits to how far Gaddafi might be able to go in using mortar and artillery fire on civilian populations, partly because the army has its own restraints, and that will weaken Gaddafi's own loyalists as time goes by. But that will be one of the important variables in determining how far this will go, how long it will last, and what the end game will actually look like.
Absolutely. Tariq, thanks very much indeed for that. Tariq Youssef there.